Hey y'all, this is Josh Zambrano and I'm joined here with
Leticia Gutierrez. I am the Government Relations and Community Outreach Director for Air Alliance Houston.
And I am Juliana Hernandez, the Government Relations and Community Outreach Coordinator.
Thank you so much for your introductions. We are very interested in hearing the work that you do and about the positions that you hold. We'll go through first, what does it mean to be in the positions that you're currently in? And tell us a little bit about the work that you see.
Well, first of all, thank you for allowing us this space to be able to talk to other students around the tireless work that we've embarked on here. I've personally started my work at approximately 14 years ago when my son started developing upper respiratory issues. And I did a 180 on my career after his pediatrician had pointed to my zip code as being one of the culprits for his issues not getting better. I had actually went to school for finance and economics and graduated from the University of St. Thomas. And truthfully, I never saw myself doing this type of work. But taking him to the doctor and seeing other parents and other community around my region suffering through the same and worse, that's when I decided to embark on this work. And so I was very honestly fortunate that Air Alliance Houston, almost 11 years ago, offered me a position as a coordinator. I genuinely didn't know specifically all of the environmental sciences behind it. I just knew that I know how to talk to community and I know how to be able to convey a lot of the things that, not just myself and my family were going through, but also being able to bridge the gap between community and lawmakers. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it all started. And it's grown since then. And truthfully, it's been hard. At the same time, the reason that it's grown, and I'm not just saying this because I'm in a room full of students, but a lot of it has been student-led and youth-led in regards to not just talking about it, sharing social media, being involved. I mean, it's becoming a huge movement where 10 years ago, my own friends were like, what are you doing? Why? Like, you do know where you live. Like, there's a whole industrial corridor. It's basically David and Goliath, right? I'm just this one little person that just was throwing little pebbles at it.
Yeah.
And now it's grown, right? Because it's not just me throwing pebbles. It's a whole host of people. And it literally takes just having the conversations and it becoming a table. I'm Hispanic, and when I would talk to my family about it, they would say, pues esas conversaciones son cosas de ricos. That's for wealthy people to discuss because we're busy trying to put food on the table. But now it's gotten to the point where it is a table topic conversation, right? Because our health, access to also quality health care. We know why these things are happening now. So all of that to say that that's how it got started for me. I've been very fortunate to have great directors and leaders and community organizers that have shown me how to properly get the message out without, getting the community stories, getting the data and the research to be able to, present when we do go to the state legislator and even to DC to meet with our lawmakers to tell them that they need to do better. So.
Thank you so much for that introduction. It does sound like you've had quite a journey. It does inspire quite a bit of hope. On to the next intro.
Thank you. So as the coordinator for government relations and community outreach, as we heard, Leticia handles a lot of things. So I help her on that front and also independently try to find different ways to maintain our connection with the community. So one thing that I do is I make sure to attend civic clubs and communicate with the community members there, including the directors and the attendees who are there. And that also includes the elected officials who are there. So that's what I do. And on top of that, me and Leticia have many meetings with different local officials within the city level, within the state level, and even the federal level. So the purpose of those meetings is to kind of express. There's different purposes for those meetings. One of them is to express our concerns on certain bills that they may have that would have an adverse effect on the public's health. Another is to continue to remind them of our ask of them. For example, if we want to continue to let them know we want you to continue to support healthy communities near the port area, that is what we do. And yeah, that's my role. Kind of a few months ago, as a government relations team, we took part in organizing a candidate forum that I'm still very proud of. So that is a great feat.
Oh, that's really great. I'm glad to hear that you've gotten a lot of experience there. You've obviously gotten a lot of community engagement. It's really important that we're having these conversations and that we're facilitating more information sharing about not only our vulnerable communities, but also how health intersects with environmental protections and how our air has a lot to do with it. Going on to the next question, what do you think is something that most students don't know but should know about Air Alliance Houston?
I think one of the biggest things is just having access to us and access to information. For me, information is power, right? And knowing how air pollution is impacting, our communities. Unfortunately, it impacts Black and brown communities the most. And so just, again, knowing, because when I found out about my son, it took me 2 times actually to go back to the pediatrician and ask him again, like, what exactly does this mean? Because I considered myself a well-informed person, going to college and did all of the things. And I grew up in the same area where I was raising my son, right?
Yeah.
I went to Milby High School near the port. And so, yeah. Did you also go to Milby?
I did not go to Milby, but I am right down the street.
Okay, well, so then right? And again, smelling the smells and feeling the things just felt like it was a way of life. That's just the way it's meant to be. But no, it's not. And just, again, we've just been very fortunate with, anytime that we get certain types of funding to be able to bring in either partners, community scientists, actual environmental epidemiologists that can tell us, hey, specifically this chemical that's being omitted can cause these types of issues in our bodies. And then specifically to children, as it pertains to children's health, obviously children's health bleeds into families' health, right? And bleeds into the whole community's health. So that's why I always would advocate, and I still do obviously advocate for children's health, because they are the most vulnerable amongst us, as well as elderly. Because as I've, again, just been delving into the work, we're recently finding out how air pollution actually, can actually also contribute to strokes, right? Wow. To mental health. And again, these are all things that are unfolding that I feel like we've known, but now there's actual scientific evidence, right? And so to me, that's been one of the biggest things, just, being able to piece the things together, because as we're out in community, we hear the stories, right? But to be able to make those connects, now we have, again, the science, the research to tie it in. Now it's connecting the dots. Where before, when I first started, it was just stories. It was just stories like mine, or my neighbors. But now we can, again, there's no turning away from it. And I feel that students, again, I can't say this enough, that you have so much power. I say that because when I go up to the state legislator, and Juliana is my witness, when students or young folks come, they know that you guys like to take time out of your day to drive all the way over there and have to prepare your testimony. They know that you're going to be paying attention, and you're in it for the long haul. This is not a one and done. This is not a one, I'm showing up today. This is, I'm going to keep advocating, right? So, and that's not just in our state legislator, that's going up to the county, that's going up to city council. I mean, we're literally on every single level of government. I don't know of any other organization that does it quite like that, and I always joke that I'm an immigrant and I just don't stop. Like, we're just those hardworking people that I just keep going, and I don't take no for an answer. And I've learned along the way, right? Because a lot of what we do deal with is their state and federal related types of permits and issues. But your local city council members and your county commissioners, heck, even your school board, it does have the power. They have influence, even if it's just to, sign on to a letter, or they have connects. They can call a certain state legislator that maybe we're trying to pull on to pay attention to a certain permit, or we're trying to have a town hall meeting around what we call a pesky polluter. They have the power to do that. And that's one thing that I feel like I've done a good job of, again, is just letting students know, letting our community know, this is what city council can do, this is what your county commissioner can do, this is what your state, and this is what your federal. And a lot of what Air Alliance Houston does too is provide those spaces. Like Juliana just mentioned, we were able to do an amazing candidate forum, right? Well, what does that mean? How does that tie into the work? Well, who we elect matters. Where do they stand on these issues, right? And a lot of times we have like panels where candidates come, you get to ask a question, they answer, and then they leave. Well, this one was more like this. It was a roundtable conversation where community got to sit at the table. You have the candidate, and they're asking the candidate one-on-one, where do you stand specifically as it pertains to these environmental concerns, as it pertains to the Project 11 at the Port of Houston. I can talk a little bit more about that, but just things that are happening that are impacting our health. And at the end of the day, they get a better idea of how they stand on these issues, and now they know whenever they get into the ballot box how they're going to vote, right? And again, this was something that I always dreamed about, because when I started this work so long ago, it was almost like people would just, even candidates would be like, nah, it was just me and maybe a couple of other people. Now, I say this wholeheartedly, like, young folk are paying attention. And when I see social media and calling people out, like, this is what's happening, this is what's going on, and just elevating that and sharing it, and just the movement growing to where it's at today, which I know that it still needs work, is amazing. And again, candidates know, okay, now people are asking a lot of questions. Now they're looking at me, and they're going to hold me accountable. And at the end of the day, that's the only way that we can create change.
Thank you so much for that answer. That went into quite a bit of what I wanted to ask you. So I'm going to have to reshape some of my questions.
No worries.
But thank you so much for your input. I'm going to be following up with a couple of the things that you said there.
Yes.
Definitely. And I think I would just, as for the question, I would just second what Leticia said. I think students, what they don't know and what we wish that they knew is that they have so much more power than they think to change things and to enact change, and that Air Alliance is here and available to help support them in those endeavors. Air Alliance has been a wealth of resource to me, even as when I was just an intern there. I got to learn a lot about legislation and also how things move and how things are impacted in Texas as far as it goes for the environment. I think I had always been interested in environmental justice. I live in the Aldine area where there's like 6-8 concrete batch plants within a few mile radiuses. And so I was always interested, but I didn't really know how to get involved. It wasn't until I attended a local civic club where they were like, we're going to meet with the TCQ. I was like, we're going to meet with the TCQ? We met with the TCQ. We were like, we have concerns about this concrete batch plant. They've been here for so many years, and they're operating, they keep extending their permit, and we feel like they're not acting as, they're pesky polluters. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I'm here to support y'all, and I'm here to listen and learn, and I'm interested in this. And then another thing that my civic club had concerns about is how there's a lot of concrete batch plants that, even though we have updated our air permit standards, they still continue to operate under the old ones, which are less restrictive. And I picked up on that, and I became concerned on that as well. And we continue to advocate and reach out to our local officials to not complain, but to say, we have a problem with this, is there something you could do? And when they would attend, they'd be like, we're going to work on this, we're going to like try to push this legislation. Well, I was at the Texas legislature this past legislative session, and we had a bill pass that made it so that concrete batch plants operating under old permits, now certain of them have to abide by the new stricter permits. So just by being in those spaces, you can have that kind of power to enact that change, and at Airlines, we're happy to help.
Wow, amazing. I want to touch a little bit back up onto what we mean by pesky polluters. Go into what goes into that definition. What should students know about these pesky polluters?
So these are industrial facilities that are constantly violating the laws on the books. We have air monitoring up and down the ship channel. Unfortunately, it doesn't test for every single pollutant. The majority of the air monitors are particulate matter 2.5, which is basically a scientific name for soot, which is the byproduct of anything that's burning. So even if there's like, some burning marsh in the area, it's going to pick it up. But we know that usually when the monitors are going off, that it's because of a plant flaring, or there's something going on where there's some, burning happening around the facilities that we need to pay attention to. So, and just really quickly, particulate matter 2.5 is one of the most dangerous chemicals to breathe in, because as you breathe them in, usually healthy people are able to expel them. But even then, sometimes, for vulnerable populations and young children and elderly, those little fine particulates can get stuck in your lungs and then go into your bloodstream and cause a whole host of inflammation, upper respiratory, COPD, heart issues, including cancer. And so these are the things that we advocate, right, for. And so all of that to say that we have a list. We did a whole press conference around, it's called the Dirty Dozen, which is the top 12 industrial facilities that are consistently just coming on the mark, that we're consistently having to stay on top of. And so, you can go on our website and just read a little bit more on those industrial facilities. But again, it takes literally a village for us to go and inform community on what does this mean and why should you get involved? Why should you come and make comments, at a TCEQ meeting? By the way, for those that don't know, TCEQ stands for the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. They are our state regulators. We pay taxes for them to be able to protect us, but sometimes it feels like they protect more of the industry than they do community. And we also try to hold them accountable, right? But I'll give you, for example, I know you mentioned Jewel Pit in Fort Bend. That's a concrete batch plant. Oh, because there's so many. There's concrete batch plants, and then there's concrete crushers, concrete mixers. There's so many aggregate facilities that are popping up, in community. And so when community shows up and they fill up a space, they start paying attention, right? Because I keep saying, when I first started this, it would literally be a room with like maybe 4 or 5 people. Now, town hall meetings, as it pertains to TCEQ permits for these facilities, whether it's a new permit or to renew a permit, there's lines out the door, and they pay attention to that. So I know sometimes 90 plus, probably 95% of the time, they usually get their permit. But we use that as ammunition. We use community showing up to give comments, those public comments, because they go on the record. We use that as ammunition, as Juliana just very eloquently stated, to be able to pass better legislation and better laws to rein them in. It's very hard. I mean, literally, the bill that we did get to pass this last leg session, it's good, but it's barely scratching the surface, right, as it pertains to a lot of the health ailments that communities having to deal with and really seeing good change. So yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work. It's almost as if, just imagine so many of like tennis balls being thrown at you, and you're trying to grasp one and then trying to take it, and seeing if you can actually make it through, right? While there's other, tennis balls just in the air, because there's just, you have concrete batch plants, you have the plastic recycling facilities now, you have the port. I mean, it just, the list goes on and on. And so it's just hard to really like hone in on one thing. But again, my hope is that the movement will continue to grow. We will continue to elect better lawmakers in these spaces, so that we don't have to work as hard for them to do what is right for us.
And then I would also add to that, I think airlines plays an especially important role in identifying these pesky polluters, especially because the TCEQ's air monitoring air monitoring system can sometimes seem unreliable just because of the distance that they are. I think we had a concrete batch plant hearing in the north side area where they mentioned, oh well, the air monitors we have say that there's not really an issue with the emissions from this site, and then it turns out the air monitor was in Deer Park, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's why I want to really highlight the importance of Air Alliance's air monitoring program and continue its support.
Wow, that is terrible.
Yeah, it is.
As far as what you would want to see inside of these systems improve, specifically, do you have any ideas as to what should be done as far as legislation, what should be done as far as policy when it comes to making sure that these pesky polluters are not only better investigated but also better corrected? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I will start with we certainly shouldn't be rolling back decade-long legislation and laws that have been there for decades that actually both parties enacted. Right now, with a lot of the attack on our Environmental Protection Agency, which is the federal government that usually set the standards for states to adopt, as those laws are starting to be basically rolled back, deleted for another word, that's very dangerous. Giving these facilities a green light to not just pollute as they were doing, but even expand that. It's very detrimental to fence line communities like my own, because the health impacts are going to be great. And so, that, again, I can't say it enough. I know it sounds like a broken record, but elections matter, right? And at the end of the day, not that this is the only issue, but you can't put a price on your health, right? If I were to ask you, hey, how much would you pay for your health? There isn't a number. There isn't a number that anybody could, sufficiently say, oh, okay, I'll go ahead and put myself in danger and my family at risk, right? And for this amount of money, right? No job, no money, no investment in your community is enough for them to be allowed to pollute in that way. And so, again, just the work that we had done during the previous administration to make that soot rule, that particulate matter 2.5 rule, just a teeny bit more, what's the word? To be able to, restrictive, just a little bit more, because at the time it was 12 micrograms per cubic meter, which just basically means that you can pollute a little bit more particulate matter, and we were trying to get it to 8. Well, actually, we were trying to get it to 6 during the previous administration, but we landed at 9. We'll take it. But even at 9, again, the health impacts. And also, like I mentioned before, I'm a finance and economics major. Just the impact and the loss to the economy. Because I can tell you, as a mom, having a sick child, right, to take off of work, to have to go spend hundreds of dollars, not just on his office visit, but then on his medication. And that's just one person, right? The loss of, worked hours for not just a mother, but for anyone who's obviously getting sick. So, we need to do a better job of just painting that cost-benefit analysis and how it's draining the economy. And everyone here, not just paying with your health, but paying with your tax dollars. Because these billion-dollar industries are getting tax subsidies, they get tax abatements, and yet we don't get that, right? To do what? To continue to pollute? And no matter what anybody tells you, we cannot say, well, they're going to do the right thing. No, they won't. They will always find the cheapest way, probably the most dirty way to be able to do what they need to get done to make sure that their bottom line is obviously where they need it to be at the cost of our health. So we have to have these laws. We have to force them to do it, or else they won't.
Thank you. I would agree. I think in a time where there's so many EPA rollbacks to environmental protections, is really important for our Texas government to step in. Although previously they had not been the most protective, I like we say, sometimes it feels like they're protecting the industry more than they're protecting our health. Although that has been the case, I think it's really time for them to step in. And then as for that, that's why a lot of elections matter, because from my experience, there were a lot of good bills proposed for environmental protection, but a lot of the reasons that they didn't pass is because maybe other people in the same chamber were not in agreement of those bills, even though in my personal opinion there's something we would consider common sense bills, such as having a church or hospital, I don't know which one it is, maybe you could help me, Leticia, but having a church or hospital entity qualify as an affected person who could then contest a concrete patch plant. And then I guess this is probably a specific bill we could go into as well that I would be in support of in the following legislative session. I might not, okay, so let me just go ahead and explain it. So a form of contesting a concrete batch plant or opposing a concrete batch plant to ensure that it doesn't come into your community is to file for I think it's affected person status. Right. And then you go into a contested case hearing, which is then litigation against the industry. And currently you have to live within 440 yards of the industry site, and you also have to qualify as an affected person. And so I believe there's legislation pushing to allow hospitals and churches and schools, unless schools already count. Schools already count. Okay, I think it's hospital and churches to allow them to also count as an affected persons, because, well, their hospital patients will be there, their worshipers will be there. So that's something that I would be in favor of in regards to legislation moving forward. And then I guess if I find a name and we're back in a few months, I'll let y'all know.
I just wanted to add really quickly, like, aside from us advocating for better bills, we also play a lot of defense on bills that, want to allow them to do more harm. And there's a lot of those. But there's one bill that I really was upset about. It wasn't this last leg session, but it was almost 3 years ago. There was actually a bill that passed, SB 471, and the 88th legislator, that if you put in more than 3 complaints, if you call TCEQ more than 3 times and they can't find they will not just flag you as frivolous, but they could also fine you. But just imagine this. It's kind of like if you're calling 911 because somebody broke into your house or somebody did some damage, but the emergency services don't get to you for days or weeks. So you probably cleaned it up, so they don't find anything. So now they're like, you're a liar. And we're going to fine you. That is a bill that passed. And that's what we deal with, right? I mean, and sometimes people, when I say these things, they're like, that can't be. And then they go and Google it. Again, go Google 88th legislator, SB 471, and you will find that bill. And these are people, again, these are legislators that are supposed to be, support, like, protecting our health. How is that basically, I mean, it's hard enough as it is, especially as it pertains to Hispanic community, because, there's language barriers. But now you're letting community know, residents know, oh, hey, guess what? If they don't come in time, which the other piece to this is that TCQ is severely underfunded. Of course, EPA, all of the Doge, I don't even know how to say it anymore, I'm sorry, rollbacks, they cut, I think, like a third of their funding. So the funding was already not there. So rolling all of this back even more, well, of course, you're not going to be able to have someone to come and, investigate your concern, because by the time they get there, and usually they even call the facility that they're coming, so of course maybe they're going to stop doing whatever it is that's happening, right? So all of that to say that it's very unfortunate, and these are people that, again, have power over our health. So it's important to pay attention. I'll tell you one, thing that you also asked earlier, like, what is it the Air Alliance Houston does that's, important? Well, the legislative session from last year, we took close to 200 community members, including students, to come to the state legislature with us so that we can walk you around, show you the Capitol, but more importantly, come and give public comments. Come have meetings with your elected, representative, and tell them, I'm here, this is my statement, and you need to do better, right? Or maybe there were some bills that we were supporting and letting them know, hey, we need you to support these bills. we want to continue to do that and grow that, because when we first did it, it was maybe about 30 people, and then the one after that was 120 people. So now it's been growing. So we see, again, as I mentioned, the movement growing. And thanks for, Juliana and other young folk inside the organization, again, just putting the word out, letting students know you can be a part of this. And that, to me, is the most hopeful thing out of this whole thing. Again, I can't say it enough, is that young folk are understanding how government works for you and against you, because they're betting that you're not paying attention. They're betting that you're too busy going to work, going to school, living your life, and just letting them do whatever they feel is important for them, right? And so yeah, I think that that's been one of our biggest accomplishments thus far. And also just, for me, I remember when I was young, even in the finance world, I would have mentors that would say, well, you can do that, or you can, they would tell me you can do this and you can do that, but they would never really show me, right? Where I feel that, not just for myself, but I want to bring students in any opportunity that I see, not just within the organization, but other coalitions, other opportunities. I'm always like, please, like, now that I know you, by the way, or, know of y'all, I'm gonna make sure that you guys are in the loop as it pertains to not just the work, but opportunities as you're graduating, as you're looking for places to land, because we have such an amazing network of, again, just local, national organizations that are looking to make sure that there are opportunities and pathways to these types of leaderships.
And then you actually reminded me of something, going back to the question where you asked, what do you wish students knew about Airlines Houston? One thing I hope that they can know is that we're very coalition based. Even within Airlines Houston, we work with HPCC, which is a Healthy Ports Communities Coalition, and we have a lot of other coalitions within Airlines Houston. And I think there are so many problems in the world. We can't all do it alone. We can't even all do it in just one organization. We have to all collaborate together. And I think the students are feeling that as well. I'm sure that there's a lot of collaboration going on even within certain student clubs. So I would just like them to know that we're very coalition based.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, I know that a lot of organizations, especially related to environmental protections and environmental health, and the effect that it has on just public health in general, they have to be, very collectivist in the way that they approach these problems, because it's a collectivist issue. Everybody's affected by these, by air pollutants. Everybody's affected by pesky polluters. It doesn't spare anybody.
Right.
And so, with all that said, going into the next question, what do you think is the biggest barrier to getting more people outside and moving towards better solutions for environmental protection?
I mean, the way the world, if we're speaking specifically today, because there's so many things happening, right? And I don't want to make it just about, our immigrant Hispanic community, because that is a community that we work very closely with. With all of the things that are happening right now and so many things being thrown at us, it's really hard to, even in regular times, to get people to want to come to a hearing, right? What does that mean? Well, it could be a regular office or a meeting space, but then you have law enforcement and you have government officials and you have lawmakers, where some people may feel right now, in this point in time, a little afraid, right? Afraid to speak in their own language, which TCQ does provide, bilingual services. But what good is that right now, right? Because there's community being targeted for not speaking English. So it's making the work harder. It's making it, we're looking for new ways to pivot, because again, the communities that we serve and the deliverables that we have for them, they're the ones right now that are suffering the most, right? Not just with the air pollution issues, but just basic survival, right? So it's hard for us to go door knocking right now and be like, hey, we know you're suffering, but could you follow us into this meeting where there's going to be government officials and you're going to be speaking out against government? it's not going to happen,
Yeah.
right? So we're pulling on other communities, more affluent communities, right? Maybe people on the west side, maybe people who don't or shouldn't have maybe anything to be afraid of. And so we're trying to look for those ways to be able to continue the work without putting more burden and more strain on communities that, like my own, that just can't right now, right? And it just feels, even for me, I know, we have goals to do things, right, as it pertains to laws, but it's just not the time right now. And so just, again, looking for those ways to continue to move the needle forward, looking for creative spaces. And again, I can't say it enough, students, because you guys are just the ones that are like, I just remember me being young, and not that I didn't think about consequences, but it's more of a, let's just do it, right? Where my generation right now, given the space that I just mentioned, it's more like, well, like if I do that, then this might happen, right? Or that might happen, and I might lose my job, or what if I get taken away, even if it's for a week, even though I'm here as a citizen, like, right? It's all the things. So right now is a time for students to rise up. Right now is a time for students to say, I have to show up for community. This is, we are, and I'm not just, again, I know I keep saying this over and over, but we are in a moment in time where these things are going to be written about in history books. We are in a moment. Sorry.
It's so hard.
You're completely okay.
There's just so much happening.
Yeah, that's what we're all feeling. Like, I couldn't have said it any better, especially with in regards to our immigrant community, because, I mean, how can your health is at risk, but how can you even step outside if you're at risk of being separated from your family or from being profiled? So I think that's something that we're working at. We're trying to, like you said, pull on our students who maybe have a different situation to then step in for that community who is too afraid to go outside. So that's what we've been working on. And I think for students too, it can be hard to go out there because you don't know what's out there for you. You're still learning, figuring out the world yourself. But that's why we mentioned we want to let them know that we're here to support them in whatever endeavors or advocacy that they want to pursue. And on top of that, something that we think it's important to recognize is that you have to meet people where they're at. I think sometimes people in environmental justice spaces forget that they're working for people who are already overburdened, and maybe they can't afford to drive 30 minutes to your event, even though that they care a lot about what's going on. Maybe they have work, they have their kids, they work 80 hours a week. So that's why we try to meet them where they're at. We're at different places all the times, different areas of Houston. I know Leticia's everywhere. I don't know. I can't find her, but it's okay. But we also try to make it accessible to attend our events. If possible, we have a lot of public transportation. For our forums, we had the Metro bus services. Whenever we take community, we take them to the places we're going to in a charter bus, and also just make it a more accessible event for them.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's honestly amazing. It's very inspiring to hear about this.
Oh.
I know I said it, once or twice before, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done here. There's a lot of communities that are being affected simultaneously, and of course, like most things, politics, it's all interwebbing.
Yes.
It's all interconnected.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
I know that we also wanted to ask a few questions. Do we have any questions from the audience regarding anything?
Anything?
Oh, I have a lot of questions.
Asif, you have a question? Okay, here.
Go ahead.
Let me go ahead and hand you over the mic.
Just to piggyback on his question, I think, and I'm paraphrasing, and you can clarify. I think he was, Joshua was asking the barrier. From, I worked with you guys in 2024, and like you said, the knowledge and giving those information helpful, because when I and another student started in Missouri City, we knew, but we didn't have any connection. Mm-hmm. So it was in summer, in April or May 2024, we walked 50 house, it takes hour and a half just to pass the flyer. And if we are to have conversation, and
longer.
a two-person doing it, it was hard. And when we were able to partner with you guys, with Airlines of Houston, it just moved much faster, much easier, and we were able to accomplish a lot more.
Yes.
Now, with Joshua Piggybank, question of other barrier, I think it's putting the right people in politics. The leader not doing their job, but if we put the right people, and like you were saying, students, and I think students will play a key factor in 2026 and moving forward, but if they don't move forward, it gets much harder. So if you want to make change, I'll say students go and vote and hold your politicians accountable.
Yeah. If I may give you a little sliver of hope, because I do have some successful stories. It's, they're few, but I'll tell you one thing, and kind of, just in regards to what you've explained. Right before COVID, I always say that TCEQ hands these concrete batch plant permits out like candy. And so there was one particular concrete batch plant that was actually in Aldine, 2019, and it was predominantly immigrant community. And so there's this organization called TMO, the Metropolitan Organization, and they're a faith-based organization. And so they usually try to organize with a lot of the religious leaders and community in the area. So I saw that was an opportunity for us to partner up. So we did a whole block walking for like 3 days. Well, the hearing happens, and the line is out the door, right? And it's all Hispanic community. And I'm thinking, great. They all show up. It's TCEQ, the concrete batch plant owner, and they're taking the comments, right? The comment period. Well, what I noticed was that, yes, a lot of immigrant community, Hispanic community showed up, but none of them had signed up to speak. They were too scared. And so I went up to the mic and I said, and I turned the mic, because usually the mic is facing TCEQ and the concrete batch plant owner. But I decided to turn the mic over to the audience, and I said in Spanish, I'm an immigrant, and I know what you're going through. And I know that this is hard, but I promise you, if you do not sign up to speak, and all they need is your name, they think that you're here in favor of it, right? Because if you don't speak up, and the TCEQ folks are like, oh, you can't do that, you can't do that, stop. And I was like, one moment. So I told them, I pleaded with them, literally, nothing is going to happen to you. I promise you. Just, you can put whatever name you want, it's just for them to be able to call your name. So I put the mic back, I went and sit down, everybody gets up, everybody lines up to sign up and speak. They get to the second speaker, and the concrete batch plant owner gets up, walks over to TCEQ, they whisper something in their ear. TCEQ comes back to the mic and says, we're stopping the hearing. The concrete batch plant owner has decided to pull the permit, meaning they're not going through with it. So everybody just cheered. Everybody was high-fiving each other. We also had Representative Armando Wally, Senator Carol Alvarado. We had all of I think we even had Congresswoman Sylvia Garcia there. We had all of our reps there, plus community, and that concrete batch plant owner thought, okay, this isn't gonna go well, right? And so we were able to stop the permit before it even continued to go forward. That was an ideal situation, and that day I learned, okay, this is gonna work. We need more of this, right? The thing is that it was the owner that pulled the permit, not TCEQ, right? But again, we're learning putting pressure on the concrete batch plant owners is a way to do it. So we've learned a lot, and we continue to grow. And like I said, it's just a movement that, I use that one specific scenario that, like I tell people, it's doable. We can continue to push back and scare them and tell them, you decide to build here, we're going to be a thorn on your side, and we're going to come at you, and we're going to keep coming at you, because we know that it's not okay for you to build next to schools, for you to build next to parks, for you to build next to communities where children are playing. We're not going to have that. So yes, I don't know if you want to add to that or.
No, I think that's perfectly well said. That there are some victories, and you mentioned that yours was a victory story, correct?
Yeah.
I've been working on social. No, I mean I agree. This event wasn't supposed to happen, and it's doable. It takes courage and not giving up, and Jan helped me to move forward last couple days, and I mean, the thing is, I was under pressure, and the moment I wake up and I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna move forward anymore, and then one of you or people who are fighting for social justice say something, and that gives the courage to move forward. And look at us. And
No, this
you
is
all
great.
feel pressure, and the whole point is don't give up and work together and move forward, because we do get win, and they try to divide and conquer. Don't let them divide. That's the whole point.
Absolutely.
Thank you again, Ona.
No, thank you guys. Thank you for having us, and thank you for continuing to spread the word and get, again, as I said, knowledge is power. And as more and more information, and you can go on our website, shameless plug, airalliancehouston.org. And our, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yes. Follow our Instagram. We post our events there. I think it's Air Alliance HOU. Yes.
Perfect. If you
And
have
sign up to our newsletter as well. You can sign up to our newsletter because people always ask us, well, we want to volunteer, or we want to, you know, and unfortunately, well, I shouldn't say that. It depends on what's going on. But I always tell people the best way to volunteer is to stay in tune with our calls to action, which means is share our socials, or call your legislators, or show up to this meeting. Those are the ways to be able to volunteer. And of course, spread the word. Let your friends know.
And donate.
Well, sure, absolutely. And there's a donate button there. We certainly appreciate all donations, especially right now. Yes, the work must go forward. So thank you guys for creating this space, and thank you for having us.
perfect. Thank you so much. And with that, we'll conclude. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you.